Jack Nelson walked along the edge of the playground, watching the children play under the warm sunshine of New Haven. The colony's 2 suns made the days bright and long, perfect for growing both crops and families. As chief security officer, Jack took his daily walks around the colony seriously, even if most days nothing happened at all. His radio buzzed at his hip. "Jack, you there?" It was Bill Hayes, the colony governor. "I'm here, Bill. What's up?" Jack asked, running a hand through his short sandy hair. "Probably nothing, but our long-range sensors picked up something odd. Can you stop by the control center?" Jack looked at his watch. "Be there in 10 minutes. Before heading to the control center, Jack walked to the school building at the edge of the playground. Through the window, he could see his wife Susan teaching a class of young children. She noticed him and smiled, excusing herself to step outside. Susan. Nelson had been a teacher on Earth before they moved to New Haven 5 years ago. Now she ran the colony's main school with over 300 students. "Everything okay?" she asked, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "Bill wants me at the control center." "Something on the sensors," Jack said, trying to sound casual. Susan's smile faded slightly. They both remembered Commander White's warning that had been sent to all border colonies last week. "Just sensors, right? Not the alarm system?" "Just sensors," Jack confirmed. "Probably a space rock or a ship off course. I'll call you after I check it out." Susan nodded and squeezed his hand before going back inside. Through the window, Jack could see their daughters Emma and Lily sitting in different parts of the classroom. Emma, at 12, was helping younger children with their reading. 8-year-old Lily was drawing something colorful at her desk. Jack turned away and walked quickly to the colony control center, a 2-story building in the middle of the settlement. Inside, Bill Hayes and several technicians were looking at screens showing space around New Haven. "What do we have?" Jack asked. Bill pointed to blips on the main screen. 5 objects moving in formation, 2 organized to be natural. "Ships?" Jack asked, feeling a chill. "Seems like it." "And they're not responding to hails," Bill said, his face grim. "They'll be in orbit in about 25 minutes at their current speed." "Have you contacted Earth Defense?" Bill nodded. "Sent out the alert 10 minutes ago, but the closest EDF ship is at least a day away." Jack looked at the approaching blips. "Those could be anybody. Traders who don't want to pay landing fees, pirates, or Dominion," Bill finished. He lowered his voice. "We need to consider evacuation protocols." Jack shook his head. "We can't evacuate everyone in 25 minutes. The ships at the spaceport can only take about 1/5 of our people." "Then we focus on the children first," Bill said firmly. Jack was about to agree when all the screens suddenly went blank. The lights flickered. "What's happening?" he demanded. A technician frantically worked at her console. "We're being jammed, all communications, inside and outside the colony." Jack didn't wait to hear more. He ran for the door, pulling out his radio even though he knew it probably wouldn't work. Susan, can you hear me?" Static was the only answer. Outside, he could see people looking up at the sky in confusion. Jack broke into a run toward the school. He had to get there before. A distant boom shook the ground. Jack stumbled but kept running. Another boom came, then another. Orbital bombardment. The Dominion ships were firing on the colony from space. When he reached the school, Susan was already leading children into the building's basement shelter. Her face was pale but calm as she directed the scared students. "Jack," she called when she saw him. "The alarms aren't working." "I know," he panted. "Communications are jammed. It's some kind of attack." Another boom shook the building closer this time. Dust fell from the ceiling. "How long until help comes?" Susan asked quietly, so the children couldn't hear. Jack looked into her eyes. "Too long. At least a day." Susan took a deep breath. "Then we need to hide. The shelter has supplies for a week, and it's built to withstand earthquakes." Jack helped Susan lead the rest of the children down to the shelter, a large reinforced room under the school. The colony had built it as a precaution, though no one ever thought they'd need to use it. Once all the children were inside, Jack pulled Susan aside. "I need to go back." There are other people who need help. Susan gripped his arm. Be careful. And Jack? If you can't come back? I'll come back, he promised, looking at Emma and Lily, who were helping to calm the younger children. Keep them safe until then. Outside, the colony was in chaos. Buildings burned from direct hits. People ran in all directions, some trying to reach the spaceport, others looking for shelter. Jack organized those he could find, directing them to the colony's other emergency shelters. But as the bombardment continued, he knew this wasn't a random attack or a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, systematic. From behind a destroyed wall, Jack watched as ships landed outside the colony. Alien figures emerged. Saurians in combat armor, moving in formation through the settlement. They're looking for something, a voice said beside him. Jack turned to see Bill Hayes, his face cut and bloodied, but his eyes clear. Or someone, Jack replied. The truth hit him like a physical blow. The children. They're targeting the children. Bill's face hardened. Commander White warned us. The Dominion wanted to test rule number 1. We have to get back to the school, Jack said, already moving. But the way was blocked by fires and Dominion soldiers. Jack and Bill were forced to hide as patrols passed. In the distance, they could see the school still standing, though part of the roof had collapsed. The shelters. Underground, Jack said, hope in his voice. If they haven't found the entrance. A new sound cut through the chaos. The high-pitched whine of smaller ships entering the atmosphere. Different from the Dominion vessels. That's not them, Bill said, squinting at the sky. Those are Earth. Ships, Jack felt a surge of hope. But the nearest EDF ship was a day away. Those aren't regular EDF, Bill said, his eyes widening in recognition. Those are Guardian drop pods. Jack had heard of the Guardians, elite human soldiers trained specifically to rescue children in danger. They were rarely deployed, but when they were. The real fight is about to begin, Jack said, as the black pods streaked across the sky toward the school. And God help the Dominion for what they've done here today. The stars twinkled in the vast darkness of space as Commander Alan White stared out the viewport of his ship. He was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and deep lines around his eyes from years of worry. His blue uniform fit perfectly, showing his rank as one of Earth's top military leaders. Alan took a deep breath. Today was important. He would meet with aliens who called themselves the Galactic Dominion. These aliens had broken away from the peaceful Galactic Council and now moved too close to human space. Commander, we will dock in 10 minutes, said Lieutenant Kate Miller from behind him. Kate was younger than Alan, with short brown hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had served with Alan for 5 years, and he trusted her more than anyone else on his team. Thank you, Kate. Is everyone ready for the meeting? Alan asked, turning away from the stars. Yes, sir. The whole team knows what to do, Kate replied. She held a data pad with notes about the aliens they would meet. But I'm worried. These Dominion aliens seem different. They don't respect the old rules. Alan nodded slowly. That's why we're here. To remind them. The ship hummed around them as it slowed to dock with the massive space station that hung in neutral territory between human space and Dominion territory. This station, built by the old Galactic Council, had hosted peace talks between spacefaring races for over 300 years. As they walked through the ship, crew members stopped to salute. Everyone knew what was at stake. Humans had lived in peace with most alien races for centuries, but peace didn't come easily. It came from respect, and sometimes from fear. Remember the history, Alan said quietly to Kate and the 4 other humans on his team as they approached the airlock. 200 years ago, the Zikari Empire attacked a human colony. They killed children. They thought humans were weak. The team nodded. Every human knew this story. What happened next? Alan asked. We destroyed them, Kate answered. Almost their entire species. We only stopped when they surrendered completely. And that's when rule number 1 was created, added Sam Green, the team's youngest member. Don't attack human children, ever. Alan touched the airlock control panel, The rule wasn't made to threaten anyone. It was made to protect everyone from what happens when humans lose control of their anger. The airlock hissed open. Let's hope we don't have to teach that lesson again. The space station's meeting room was large and round. Light came from glowing panels in the ceiling, and the walls showed moving images of different planets from across the galaxy. On one side of a long table sat Alan's team. On the other side sat the representatives of the Galactic Dominion. The Dominion aliens were mostly saurians, tall, reptile-like beings with scales in colors of green, blue, and black. Their leader, High Commander Vrakith, had dark blue scales, with gold patterns and yellow eyes with narrow black pupils. He looked at the humans with what seemed like amusement. "Commander White," Vrakith said, his voice deep and rumbling. "The Dominion welcomes you, though we wonder why this meeting was requested with such urgency." Alan placed his hands flat on the table. "High Commander, we've noticed your forces moving closer to human space, specifically near our colony, at New Haven." Vrakith tilted his large head. "The Dominion expands where it wishes. Space is vast. Surely you don't claim ownership of empty systems just because they're near your worlds." "We don't," Alan said calmly. "But New Haven is a family, colony. Over 3,000 humans live there. Almost a third are children." The room grew quiet. The other saurians shifted in their seats, but Vrakith just blinked slowly. "Children," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "Yes, your species places unusual importance on your young. An evolutionary weakness, perhaps." Kate tensed beside Alan, but he gave her a small signal to stay calm. "Not weakness, High Commander. Just different values," Alan said. "But those values are why I'm here today. To remind you of rule number 1 of galactic relations with humans." Vrakith made a sound like stones grinding together. A saurian laugh. "Ah yes, the famous rule. Don't attack human children. We've heard the stories of what happened to the Zakari." He leaned forward, his scales gleaming in the light. "But that was 200 years ago, Commander. Perhaps humans have grown softer since then. Perhaps the stories are exaggerated. After all, no species could really be so destructive over the loss of a few young ones who hadn't even reached maturity." The human team stared in shock. No one had ever spoken this way about rule number 1. Alan's face didn't change, but his voice grew quieter. "High Commander, the rule exists to protect everyone. If human children are harmed, we don't have a choice in how we respond. It's not a decision we make. It's something that happens to us. Something ancient. Something terrible." Vrakith sat back, eyes narrowing. "Threats, Commander? That seems beneath you." "Not threats. Warnings," Alan replied. "The same warning every species in the galaxy gives to their young. Don't provoke the humans." The meeting continued for hours, discussing borders, trade, and resources. But Alan could see that Vrakith wasn't really listening. The High Commander had a look in his eyes that Alan had seen before, the look of someone who didn't believe the fire was hot until they touched it. As they returned to their ship, Kate walked beside Alan. "They're going to do something, aren't they? They don't believe the rules apply to them." Alan looked tired as the airlock closed behind them. "I think Vrakith believes the stories about humans are just propaganda. He wants to test us." "What do we do?" asked Sam. Alan turned to face his team, his eyes hard now. "We prepare. I want every ship in 3 sectors on alert. Special attention to New Haven and other family colonies. And contact the Guardians. Tell them to move their stealth platforms closer to the border." "The Guardians?" Kate's eyes widened. The elite forces hadn't been activated in decades. "Yes," Alan said, "and pray we don't need them. Because if we do, the galaxy is about to learn why rule number 1 exists. Again." As their ship pulled away from the station, Alan returned to the viewport. He watched the stars and thought about New Haven, where families lived and children played, not knowing that they might soon be at the center of a storm that could change the galaxy forever. And deep in Dominion space, High Commander Vrakith was already planning his test, a test that would answer once and for all whether humans were Truly the fearsome force of legend or just another species that could be conquered and controlled. Neither leader knew that in just 3 days, everything would change. Admiral Olivia Barnes stood in the command center of Earth Defense Station Alpha, her gray eyes fixed on the emergency alert flashing on the main screen. At 55, Olivia had served in the Earth Defense Force for over 30 years, but she had never seen this particular alert before. The message was simple. New Haven Colony. Rule 1 violated. Olivia's hands gripped the edge of her console. Confirm this, she ordered, her voice steady despite the ice spreading through her veins. Confirmed, Admiral, replied her communications officer. Automated distress beacon, from New Haven Colony. Signal cut off after the initial message, but colony sensors detected orbital bombardment before going dark. How many children on New Haven? Olivia asked. Colony records show approximately 900 children under 18, the officer answered. The room fell silent. 900 children. Olivia straightened her back. Activate the Cerberus protocol. All available ships to New Haven. Maximum. Speed. She turned to her second-in-command. Get me the Guardian commander. Within minutes, the face of Commander Rick Davis appeared on her screen. Rick was younger than Olivia, in his 40s, with a face that rarely showed emotion. His eyes were his only tell. Right now they burned with cold fury. Guardians are already responding, Admiral, Rick reported. First team will reach New Haven in 2 hours. We have stealth platforms in that sector. Good, Olivia said. Regular fleet vessels will take longer. The Intrepid is closest at 26 hours out under Captain Wilson. That's too long, Rick said. I know. That's why you're going in first. Olivia leaned closer to the screen. Rick, we don't know who did this yet. Initial reports suggest Dominion forces, but confirm before engaging. Rick nodded. We'll confirm. But if it's the Dominion, then they've broken rule number 1, Olivia finished. And they'll learn why that rule exists. As Rick's image disappeared, Olivia called an emergency meeting with Earth's Leadership Council. Within an hour, all major Earth governments and colony representatives had been informed. Economic sanctions against the Dominion were already being implemented. Intelligence operations were activated. Civilian ships were being prepared to evacuate. Survivors. This isn't just a military response, Olivia told the council. This is Cerberus protocol. We respond on all fronts, and we respond proportionally to the harm done to our children. Meanwhile, on the Guardian stealth platform near New Haven, Rick Davis and his team prepared their drop pods. The Guardians were unlike any other Earth military force. They trained exclusively for one mission, protecting and rescuing human children. In hostile situations, each Guardian wore advanced combat armor with built-in stealth technology. Their weapons were designed for maximum effectiveness with minimum collateral damage, and each one had volunteered knowing that their missions would take them into the most dangerous situations imaginable. Final briefing. Rick told the 30 men and women gathered before him. New Haven Colony is under attack, likely by Dominion forces. Colony communications are jammed. Last known status, approximately 900 children, many at the main school complex. He showed a map of the colony on the screen behind him. Our primary mission is rescue and evacuation of all children. Secondary mission is protection of adult civilians. Do not engage enemy forces unless necessary for mission completion. A Guardian raised her hand. Sir, if this is a Rule 1 situation, why aren't we going in hot? Rick's face remained impassive. Because we need to be sure. And because the real response comes after we get those kids out. The Guardian nodded, understanding. The Guardians weren't just a rescue force, they were also witnesses. The galaxy needed to see what happened when rule number 1 was broken. Drop pods ready in 5 minutes, announced the platform's AI. Stealth systems optimal. Rick put on his helmet, its systems connecting with his neural implants. Through the special link, he could feel each member of his team, their positions, their status. It was an intimacy born of necessity. In the chaos of combat, they needed to function as one organism. Remember, Rick said as they moved to their pods, we go in quiet. We find the children, we get them out, and we make sure the ones responsible know exactly what they've done. The drop was silent and invisible. Guardian pods used technology that bent light and absorbed heat, making them nearly undetectable as they entered New Haven's atmosphere. They landed in a scattered pattern around the colony, each Guardian emerging like a ghost into the chaos of the attacked settlement. Through Rick's helmet, he saw the destruction. Buildings burned, bodies lay in the streets, and through it all, Dominion soldiers moved with purpose, searching the ruins. "They're looking for survivors," reported Guardian Lily Chen through their neural link. "Specifically, they're checking places where children might hide." Rick felt cold rage build inside him, but his training kept it contained. Team 1 and 2 converge on the school. Team 3 sweep the residential sector. Team 4 with me to the colony center. As they moved, Rick received data from the colonial governor's emergency beacon. It was weak but active, showing the location of Bill Hayes near the burned remains of what had been a park. Rick found the governor hiding with several colonists in a partially collapsed building. When the Guardians appeared, Bill Hayes nearly attacked them with a makeshift weapon before recognizing their Earth insignia. "Guardian." "Commander," Bill gasped, lowering his metal bar. "Thank God." "Governor Hayes," Rick acknowledged. "Status report. Dominion ships hit us without warning," Bill explained, his voice shaking. "They targeted communication arrays first, then key infrastructure. But—" He paused, his face showing disbelief. "They specifically targeted areas where children gather. The school, the playground, the sports fields?" "The school," Rick said urgently. "What's its status?" "Jack Nelson, our security chief, was heading there last I saw him," Bill said. "His wife Susan runs the school. They have an underground shelter, but I don't know if they reached it in time." Rick relayed this information to the teams heading toward the school. "Be advised, possible civilian shelter at the school location. Approach with caution." "Commander," came Guardian Alex Ward's voice through the link. "We're at the school. Building is damaged, but the structure is mostly intact. We've detected life signs below ground level. A lot of them." "Dominion forces?" "Affirmative. They're trying to breach what appears to be a sealed door. They're using cutting equipment." Rick's decision was immediate. Engage, protect that shelter, at all costs. Through his neural link, Rick felt rather than saw what happened next. His Guardians, trained to protect children at any cost, moved with deadly precision. The Dominion soldiers at the school never knew what hit them. "Shelter secure," Alex reported minutes later. "We've made contact with the civilians inside. Approximately 300 children, mostly unharmed. Susan Nelson is in charge." Rick felt a moment of relief, quickly replaced by determination. "Begin evacuation to the platform, and find Jack Nelson. We'll need all the colony leaders for what comes next." As the first children were led from the shelter to waiting evacuation transports, Rick received a new message from Admiral Barnes. "Intrepid has pushed its engines beyond safety limits," she told him. "Captain Wilson will arrive in 18 hours, not 26. And Rick, preliminary casualty reports?" Rick checked the data coming in from his team's scans. The numbers made his blood run cold. 57 children confirmed dead, he reported. Dozens more injured, some critically. Admiral Barnes closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they held the same cold fury as Rick's. "Cerberus Protocol Level 2, she said. "The proportional response is authorized." Rick understood what that meant. The Dominion had broken rule number 1, and now they would learn why that rule existed. Captain Frank Wilson stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force destroyer Intrepid, watching the stars blur as his ship pushed beyond safe speed limits. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with close-cropped dark hair and eyes that rarely blinked. His crew worked silently around him, each person aware of the gravity of their mission. "Engine status," Frank asked his chief engineer through the ship's communication system. "Redlining, Captain," came the reply. "We've bypassed 3 safety protocols. She's holding for now, but I can't promise for how long." "Keep her together, Chief," Frank said. "We need to reach New Haven." The navigation officer looked up from her station. "Captain, at current speed, will arrive in 16 hours. Frank nodded. It wasn't fast enough, but it was the best they could do. The Guardians were already on the ground, but a single defense platform wasn't enough to evacuate an entire colony or to deal with the Dominion fleet in orbit. Weapons status? Frank asked. All systems ready, Captain, replied the tactical officer. But he hesitated. Standard engagement protocols? Frank turned to look at his crew. They all knew what this mission was. New Haven. Rule 1 violated. The words hung in the air unspoken. This is a Cerberus protocol operation, Frank said quietly. Level 2. We will disable rather than destroy when possible. We need prisoners to deliver our message. The crew nodded. Level 2 meant the response would be precisely proportional to the harm done. 57 children confirmed dead. Each responsible party would face justice. Deploy scout drones when we're 6 hours out, Frank ordered. I want complete intel on the Dominion fleet before we arrive. As the Intrepid raced toward New Haven, Rick Davis and his Guardians continued their work on the ground. They had secured the school and begun evacuating children to the stealth platform, which had medical facilities and space for the wounded. Rick found Jack Nelson helping injured colonists near the colony center. When Jack learned the Guardians had secured the school, his face showed the first sign of hope since the attack began. Susan? My daughters? He asked urgently. Your wife is organizing the children in the shelter, Rick told him. Your daughters are with her. All 3 are unharmed. Jack closed his eyes briefly in relief before his expression hardened again. The Dominion troops are concentrating near the spaceport now. They seem to be waiting for something. Rick nodded. Probably for their commanders to decide what to do next. They didn't expect us to respond so quickly. What happens now? Jack asked. Now we get as many people to safety as we can, Rick said. The Intrepid is coming, but until then, we're on our own against whatever ships the Dominion has in orbit. Jack looked up at the sky where Dominion ships could be seen through breaks in the clouds. Why did they do this? They must have known about rule number 1. They knew, Rick said. They just didn't believe it. As they spoke, a Guardian approached with an urgent message. Commander, we've captured a Dominion officer. He was directing the attack on the residential sector. Rick's face showed no emotion as he followed the Guardian to where the prisoner was being held. The Saurian officer had dark green scales with red markings on his face. His yellow eyes glared defiantly as Rick approached. What is your rank and position? Rick asked. The Saurian remained silent, his mouth closed in a tight line. Rick knelt to look directly into the alien's eyes. 57 children are dead. Do you understand what that means? The Saurian's expression wavered slightly. We follow orders, he finally said in accented human language. Whose orders? Rick pressed. The Saurian looked away. High Commander, Frakith directs this operation personally. He said the humans must be tested. Rick stood up, his decision made. Secure him on the platform. We'll need his testimony later. As the Earth's response unfolded on the ground, Admiral Olivia Barnes coordinated a much larger operation from Earth Defense Station Alpha. Every available ship in human space was being redirected. Intelligence assets were tracking Dominion leaders. Economic measures were freezing Dominion assets across the galaxy. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session, her political officer reported. Most species are condemning the Dominion attack, especially after we released the initial casualty reports. Olivia nodded. The Council's support wasn't necessary, but it would make things easier. And the Saurian homeworld? Their government is claiming no knowledge of Rakith's actions. They say he's acting independently. Convenient, Olivia said, her voice cold. Make sure they understand that our response will be proportional, but it will be complete. Anyone who approved this attack will face consequences. Meanwhile, in the shelter beneath New Haven School, Susan Nelson worked to keep 300 children calm and organized as the Guardians prepared them for evacuation. We're going to move in small groups, she explained to the older children who were helping her. The youngest ones first, then those who are hurt, then everyone else. 8-year-old Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mom, are the bad aliens going to come back? Susan hugged her daughter close. No, honey. The Guardians are here now and more help is coming. 12-year-old Emma stood nearby, looking serious as she helped comfort younger children. Dad said humans protect their children. That's why everyone in space is afraid to hurt us. Susan didn't correct her daughter. It was true after all. Not that humans wanted other species to fear them, but the galaxy needed to understand that there were lines that could not be crossed. As the first group of children was led to the waiting transport, Susan watched the Guardian soldiers. They moved with precision and purpose, their faces showing no emotion behind their helmets. But she could feel their controlled rage, like a physical force in the air around them. One of the younger Guardians approached her. Ms. Nelson, we've received word that your husband is safe. He's helping with rescue operations in the colony center. Susan felt tears of relief for the first time since the attack began. Thank you. Please tell him we're okay. The Guardian nodded. Ma'am, once the children are secure, we'll need your help. We're documenting everything that happened here. Every child who was harmed, every building that was targeted. Why? Susan asked, though she already knew the answer. Because the galaxy needs to remember, the Guardian said simply. This can never happen again. Above the colony, the Dominion fleet began to show signs of confusion. Their ground forces were reporting Guardian attacks. Their commanders were requesting instructions from High Commander Vrakith. And at the edge of the system, the first signs of the human response were appearing on their sensors as the Intrepid pushed its engines beyond their limits, racing to deliver humanity's answer to those who had broken Rule Number 1. High Commander Vrakith stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion warship Relentless. His blue scales seemed darker in the dim light as he watched the tactical display showing the human ship approaching New Haven. Just one ship, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. After everything we did, they send one ship? His second-in-command, a Saurian named Krell, looked nervous. High Commander, our ground forces report that special human troops have already landed. They call them Guardians. And this approaching ship, our sensors show it's pushing beyond normal operational limits. Vrakith made a dismissive gesture with his clawed hand. One ship cannot stand against our fleet of 5 warships. Prepare to engage when it enters weapons range. High Commander, Krell said carefully, perhaps we should withdraw. We have tested the humans as you wished. We have seen that they do respond quickly to threats against their young. Vrakith turned his yellow eyes on Krell. Withdraw? After one ship? The whole point was to see if the stories about human vengeance were true. One ship is not vengeance. It's barely even a response. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Captain Frank Wilson prepared his crew for battle. The scout drones had provided detailed information about the Dominion fleet, 5 warships, all heavier than the Intrepid. Standard tactics won't work here, Frank told his officers. We're outnumbered and outgunned, but we have 2 advantages. First, they don't know what we're capable of. Second, they don't understand why we're here. Sir? Asked his tactical officer. Frank's face was calm, but his eyes were hard. They think this is a military operation. It's not. This is a Cerberus protocol mission. We're not here to win a battle. We're here to deliver a message. The Intrepid dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Haven system, its engines glowing dangerously hot from the strain of the journey. All weapon systems ready, reported the tactical officer. Advanced targeting online. Communications, open a channel to the Dominion flagship, Frank ordered. The communications officer worked at her console. Channel open, sir. Frank stood, straight, his voice clear and controlled. Dominion vessels, this is Captain Frank Wilson of the Earth Defense Force destroyer Intrepid. You have attacked a human colony and killed children. You have violated Rule Number 1. Surrender immediately. On his bridge, Vrakith laughed when he heard the message. They demand our surrender? With one ship? He turned to his weapons officer. Target their engines. Let's show them what happens to those who make demands of the Dominion. The Dominion ships moved to surround the Intrepid, their weapons charging. But Frank Wilson had expected this. He had studied Dominion tactics, and he knew what Vrakith would do. Evasive pattern Cerberus. Frank ordered calmly. Primary weapons target their flagship's weapon systems only. Secondary weapons target the engines of all other vessels. What happened next stunned the Dominion fleet. The Intrepid moved, with impossible speed, executing maneuvers that should have torn a ship of its size apart. Its weapons fired with pinpoint accuracy, striking exactly where Frank had ordered. The Dominion flagship shuddered as its main weapons went offline. The other ships found themselves suddenly unable to maneuver as the Intrepid's secondary weapons disabled their engines with surgical precision. "Impossible," Vrakith whispered, watching his tactical display as the human ship danced between his vessels, systematically disabling them without destroying them. "No ship can move like that. No weapons can be that precise." "High Commander," Krell said urgently. "We're receiving reports from the ground. More human ships are arriving. Not warships, different ships." On the surface of New Haven, Rick Davis watched as specialized human vessels landed near the colony. These weren't military ships, but something else entirely. Scientists, doctors, legal experts, and documentation specialists emerged. "The witnesses are here," Rick told Jack and Susan Nelson, who stood with their daughters watching the new arrivals. "Now the real response begins." Susan looked confused. "I don't understand. I thought the Intrepid was coming to fight the Dominion ships." "The Intrepid isn't here to destroy them," Rick explained. "It's here to capture them. What happens next isn't about fighting, it's about justice." Over the next few hours, the human response unfolded with the same precision as the Intrepid's attack. The Dominion ships, disabled but intact, were boarded by Earth Defense Force troops. The crews were taken into custody. High Commander Vrakith, found trying to erase records in his private quarters, was personally escorted to the Intrepid by Captain Wilson. On the surface, the specialized teams documented everything, every destroyed building, every injury, every death. They took statements from survivors and recorded the names of every child who had been harmed. 1 week after the attack, Admiral Olivia Barnes arrived at New Haven aboard the Earth Defense Force Command carrier Justice. The colony was already being rebuilt. The injured were being treated. The dead had been honored with solemn ceremonies. In a temporary structure at the center of the colony, Olivia met with the leaders of New Haven and the commanders who had responded to the attack. Jack and Susan Nelson were there, along with Governor Bill Hayes, Rick Davis, and Frank Wilson. "The documentation is complete," Olivia told them. 57 children dead, 122 injured, every name recorded, every story preserved. She placed a data tablet on the table. "High Commander Vrakith has been tried and found responsible, along with 23 other Dominion officers who planned and carried out this attack." "What happens to them?" Susan asked quietly. "They won't be executed," Olivia said. "That would be too easy. Instead, they will spend the rest of their lives in a special prison. Every day they will learn about the children they killed. They will study human history and culture. They will understand exactly what they destroyed." Jack looked skeptical. "And the rest of the Dominion?" "The Saurian government has denounced Vrakith's actions and withdrawn from the Dominion. The other species have been given a choice: rejoin the Galactic Council or face complete isolation. Most have already agreed to return to the Council. Will this be enough?" Bill asked. "Will the galaxy remember?" Olivia's face was solemn. "They will remember. Every species in the galaxy will receive the full documentation of what happened here, and every new species that achieves space travel will learn about New Haven as part of their first contact protocol." 1 year later, Susan Nelson stood on a small hill overlooking the rebuilt colony of New Haven. The school had been reconstructed, larger than before. A memorial garden stood beside it, with 57 trees planted in a circle. As Earth's new representative to the Galactic Council, Susan had returned to New Haven for the memorial ceremony. Her daughters stood beside her, along with Jack and many others who had survived the attack. The rule wasn't created as a threat, Susan told the assembled representatives from across the galaxy. It was created to protect all of us, humans and non-humans alike, from what happens when humanity's deepest instinct is triggered. She looked at the memorial trees, each one bearing the name of a child who had been lost. Remember New Haven? She said. And remember rule number 1, don't attack the human children. Not because we demand special treatment, but because some lines should never be crossed by any species. As the galaxy moved forward, the story of New Haven became more than a warning. It became the foundation of a new understanding between species, and the rule that had once been whispered in fear became a principle of galactic peace, engraved on the walls of the council chamber for all to see. The true measure of any civilization is how it treats its most vulnerable members.